Hello, everyone. Today, our special guest is Pilar Alessandra. She's an acclaimed screenwriting coach and instructor. She is also the author of Coffee Break Screenwriter and its follow-up, Coffee Break Screenwriter Breaks the Rules. And today, we dive deep on screenwriting, how to become better storytellers, and a ton of insight on how to lead stronger storytelling careers. Enjoy. Let's go a little into your origin story, I suppose. Like, how did you get into writing in general? Was it something you just always loved doing? And then we could kind of bring that up to the point where you got into more your career, like, hey, this is a career. I love this.
Well, I think dropped into the career rather than the writing. I was just somebody in her 20s who was like in LA. I had always had an acting background and found out I was terrible on camera. And I'm in my 20s. And so I'm selling food out of a cart instead. And somebody said, well, hey, you know how you were always really great at writing papers in lit class in college? There's something called a script coverage. And I was wondering if you could do one for my company. And I was like, sure, that sounds like fun, right? So I started doing that. And then somebody was like, hey, idiot, you could be paid for that. And I was like, wait, what? What? I could be paid? So I was like, oh, I think I'll go work at Steven Spielberg's company. It was like, it really helps when you know nothing, when you're in your 20s, when you're just like, sure, I could just do that, right? And I did apply over at Amblin. And it turned out that the company I was reading for free for was a very hot indie company at the time. And Allison Anders was a independent director who's, they were making her movies, and people wanted, somebody who had a perspective on scripts who looked like me. So I ended up reading for Amblin Entertainment. Amblin became DreamWorks after a while. Now it's back to being Amblin. I worked as a liaison with Amblin and Image Movers. I was a senior story analyst at Radar Pictures. I, briefly did some coverage for Saturday Night Live Studios. And in all that time, I discovered I love movies. I love scripts. I love analyzing writing. I love analyzing story. And what I was learning as I was doing that was what was popping and what wasn't. And so I started consulting and teaching off of what I was learning working in development. And that became my creativity. That became the thing that I loved. And it didn't make me want to write scripts. It made me want to hear more stories and read other people's scripts. So that's how I got into it.
Wow, that's life takes you funny places,
It
and
does.
that's
It
so
does.
wild, though. And yeah, I think it's this is a subject I wanted to bring up with you too. Is in any art or whatnot, you have these kind of two sides of a coin where it's like there's natural born talent where more people have like more of an easier aptitude in that given subject, and then there's skill where you're building on it. Of course, you can always build upon skill. It's like I always compare it like it's like the tortoise and the hare story, right? It's like talent's like the hare. It's a great quality to have, but they get their maybe better aptitude for it. And then the tortoise is like you work at it, but you plug away, and it's a lot of times proves more effective. Maybe we could go into that kind of concept. You having done so much coaching and seeing so many stories on the approach, whether someone's brand new to screenwriting or novels or whatnot, to someone that's very seasoned or someone that's super successful career to someone kind of meandering. What is a good way to approach their story structure and writing overall when it comes to that talent versus skill? What's the secret in the sauce, I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say.
I think you've hit on it though, that what people really are looking for is the skillful artist. They are not looking for somebody who can just crank out something per some set of structural rules and just here's the script. I followed a formula, here you go. Okay? That actually is not what people want. They want this artistry that only you can bring to it. They want the nuance. They want that moment they weren't expecting. That all is what a creative person brings. So I do believe it is a balance of both. So it really depends on the writer. Sometimes they are sort of following certain rules, and I have to bring out the nuances with them and say, what are you trying to show here? What are the between the lines moment? And then there are some people who are like, here's everything I think in my brain, and I have to say, let's organize a little bit, so that your audience is following the story that's in your brain. That's really important. So there isn't one or the other. It's always trying to do this combination.
That's a beautiful way to put it. That's amazing. And there's also another aspect to this too. I noticed, because I'm doing all these screenwriting books and storybooks and learning how to put structure, and everything goes into the basics. You got your protagonist and your antagonist and the three act structure. And you
Yeah.
kind of get to a point. It's important to have those as tools. But at
Yeah.
some point, I had a martial arts instructor. He had a great point. Like, some people God given talent, some people have this skill, and then it's that spark or the X factor or your persona. Because at the end of the day, I find myself writing. I'm doing all these, like you said, rules, and I'm like, put yourself into that. Inject your creativity or your persona. So maybe we could go into that concept as far as keeping you grounded.
So keeping you grounded, I think sort of mentioning that little X factor that you said when it comes to your own sport, right? With your own sport, you have to learn certain basics, right? Or you're going to be in danger, actually. Right? I
Yeah.
would imagine, right? You're going to get your butt kicked, right? So you have to learn certain things and master those things. But then when you're involved in it, instinct takes over. So you want to get to that place where, okay, let's say you're reading 1,000 books and all this stuff. My gut is you've got it. All right, let's stop reading. Let's stop doing all that while you're writing. Okay, now let your instinct take over. You know where you have to go, gut it up. Okay, because I would imagine that's the thing when you're in a fight, right? Is you have to now say, I know the move, I can execute it perfectly, but I have to know sort of instinctively when to go and when to hold off, right? I think.
Right. That's an amazing analogy. I don't know if it's ever been described like this before, but that's our conversation. But it makes a lot of sense. There is a such thing as you need to plan, but there's over planning, overthinking, and maybe we could talk about enough people I've interviewed or worked with, and even stuff I've done so far as a writer or storyteller of any kind. You kind of get in your own way is
Mhm.
like number one. Can we maybe go into that concept?
Oh, I have to sort of get people off the ledge at least once a month. There's somebody who will call me, or they won't call me. They will write me and they'll say, I know we are this far into the script, and I know you say that it's working, but I don't believe you. And I think that my whole idea is stupid, and I'm going to start from the beginning. And I just want to let you know we're doing that. And I will write back and I'll be like, no, no, no. We're going to pick up where we are because it really is as good as I'm saying. And just because it started to get easier does not mean it's not good. So sometimes when people get in the flow and it's just coming, they think, oh, this is easy. This is instinctive. I must be screwing it up. It must be boring. It must not be working. It's like, maybe you just crossed the threshold. Maybe that's what's happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because you could feel coming too easy, like maybe I'm not being creative enough here or smart enough for audiences, which audiences are very, very smart. And I've talked to someone recently about this, about like don't spoon feed them, let them have them something to chew on. But
Right.
I love that concept because, yeah, that is it. You're stepping on your own toe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, people, they panic all the time and they just have to get out of their own way sometimes. People, just by watching movies, you've become a story expert. You have to sort of embrace what it is that you already know. You're better than you think you are.
And maybe that's it too, Pilar. Like so much, like movies and books and games and all these things, we're actually bombarded by it, and it's almost like maybe I'm sure people like try to measure themselves to, which is not. It's like parallels. It's not appropriate for your own voice, if you will, or whatnot. And people are looking for that, right? They're actually looking for your voice. They want you to be a winner on that.
Right, because we have so many things that we've seen so many times, right? The X factor you're talking about is what's fresh, what's new. And a lot of people don't believe that. They're like, no, no, they just want you to regurgitate the same old, same old. Well, that's not true. You're going to the movies,
Right.
Okay. You wouldn't be doing that if there wasn't something fresh that is giving you a question enough to be answered that you will pay money to see this thing or watch it on TV all the way through. Right. So it's that what's the hook? What's fresh? What's new? What's the twist? What's the unexpected? Or what is just a completely new point of view with a genre that we've seen before?
Another thing I wanted to bring up, because I see myself have hit this, I've seen so many writers go through it, you've seen it probably a gajillion times, is like, why, as a writer, like, why am I writing? I'm sure it's different for everybody, but it goes far beyond like, well, okay, I get paid to do this, or I need attention or approval, or it defines me, or whatever. I think it's important to look at, like, why am I writing? Because I feel like, hey, I'm going to write this because I think, film festival programmers will like this story or this audience. And it's like, usually the audience doesn't even know. I mean, as an audience, I don't know what I want till I see the preview or I'm in the seat. So maybe we can approach that concept like as a healthy kind of mentality and outlook as a writer creating your story. I don't think you want to be so aloof or like you don't care about the audience because you want them to understand it and go on this journey. But at the same time, you don't want to be like, no, I think if I write this, the audience, it's only about the audience. So what is that balance?
Story first. If you're doing this for attention, well, it might be a long time till you get it, So I don't think all of those reasons, like, oh, I'm doing this because the market wants me to, I'm doing this, all these things that you listed, I don't think it's gonna last. So it's got to be story first. It's got to be, I'm doing this, I have this story I want to tell. And I think writing it as a feature or writing it as a TV pilot is the best way to tell it. That's why. So you do that, and then, yes, let's say that you're thinking, I would love it to be an indie horror movie along the lines of Obsession. Okay, I'd love it to be compared to Obsession. All right, well, then you'd be thinking about, well, what did I love about that? Where did it surprise me? Where did it meet certain genre expectations? So if after you've got your story that you want to tell and you're telling it and you are at all adjusting it to meet a market or audience, meet the audience that you are. What do you want from a movie? And be your biggest fan as you're writing the movie and write to that fan. That will satisfy the audience and your desire to write the story.
That's a beautiful way of putting that. I think that's important first and foremost, and I think it's another interesting subject because you've probably experienced this in your career, I'm sure, and maybe definitely seen others where, let's say, they do get that, okay, they get that hit, or whatever breaks them through to whatever next level, but then it's like, oh no, I gotta follow that up.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
intimidating, and they may or may not be able to do that, or maybe those, who knows, a one-off. So approaching a writing career, going into, okay, I got some sort of success here, going into the next project after that. What's a good mentality to follow up on that?
It's to always be writing. And the reason for that is that, let's say something hits, it's not, oh no, what am I going to write now? It's what else have I got? Because that's what everybody asks anyway. You go into a meeting, you finally get the big meeting that you wanted, right? And they're like, we love your voice. What else have you got? Well, wait a minute. You brought me in because you love my voice for this one project. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're not going to make
Yeah.
it. We have something like it already. What else have you got, right? So the minute you complete something, you're putting it out in the world. We're hoping that you're getting little bites. It's going to take forever, all that stuff, which means you need to be writing the next thing. So it will be right there. Okay. Then what else you got? You got an answer for it rather than now you have to write something brand new. And by the time you finish it, it's 4 months later and people
Right.
forgot that they asked you for it, you know?
It's like, hey, I worked really hard on this. Can we talk about the subject at hand, please?
Right, right. Well, they want more and they want it now.
And I really want to commend you on, especially, I mean, I found upon your work with your book, Coffee Break Screenwriter, and that really helped me a lot. I know it's helped so many others. I suppose for me, it's like you're in front of the screen and you're like, all right, I'm outlining, I got the idea, a log line. And this was like, I felt like, I'll talk for myself. I was making it too precious, too important. Why am I doing that to myself?
Hmm.
That's not fair to. Why would you do that? But you made it easy. It's like, here, read this little section. All right, 10 minutes. I'm like, that I can do. Even
Sure.
Spielberg said, as a director,
Hmm.
write every day because writing's directing and it correlates. So maybe you go into Coffee Break Screenwriter, and we can also go into the follow-up book with that, like Breaking the Rules. But like, why did you write that book? What need did you see that writers were getting? People like me.
Well, in the first edition, which was a million years ago, I wrote it because I noticed that in class, people were using that class time to write as much as possible. So I started making these little pockets where it was not only that I was sort of guiding them in what to do, I was having them stop and do it. And they left with work every class. And I realized how much they could get done in such a short amount of time. And at the time I mean, I still have children, but they're grown. But at the time, my children were small. And I was a working mom with two small kids. And I kept saying to everybody, just give me 10 minutes, you know? And I realized that the majority of people out there are just like me, right? They're busy parents or they're busy college students. They're working, right? So the idea was create a book that would let them actually progress with the story they had to tell with 10-minute pockets of writing time, and they could see that they would actually make progress. And that's why I wrote it and had a second edition and why it worked out for people. I would still love to do a third edition because I think that a lot of
I'm
things,
leaning in.
yeah, I think a lot of things need to change. So, stay tuned.
My interest is peaked. Uh,
Okay.
I always joke with my wife. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Put my 10 minutes in." It's like my 10-minute abs for screenwriting muscle workout.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do it every day, and that's it. It's an everyday thing. Anything you do every day, it's almost like now I'm not overthinking. I can't overthink because this is normal for me.
Right.
That's what I really loved about that. Of course, you went into other aspects that help push me, my thoughts on how to approach the character arc and so on and so forth, and
Yeah.
avoiding cliches and all these things. And but I always kind of went like overthinking there. This made it real doable and simple, and that's it. Most people are doing their day job or working all day, and they're like, let me sneak this in.
Right. Exactly. It can be simple.
Let me ask you this too. Like, I mean, the oldest thing to mankind is storytelling, right? Since caveman times around the campfire. Why do you think we as audiences, I'm sure there's different divisions, it could apply to different people for different reasons, but why do you think we need that? I mean, we need that in our life. It keeps us grounded and sane in our daily lives, whether it's escapism or educational. Why do you think we need that?
Just last night, I was describing a book that I just read and responded to my husband, and he was pretending to be interested. But anyway, as I'm telling him the story, I realize I'm telling it to him in layers, like a puzzle.
Hmm.
And I thought for just a second, yes, there's all the reasons we tell stories. Like you said, it's to be entertained, it's to escape. But also, I think we love puzzles. We love figuring things out.
Hmm.
We love saying, okay, there are these two people that would never get together on the planet. How in the world could this ever happen? Or there's this event that happened. How can we solve that problem, right? Puzzles. And I think that's what keeps us invested in the next story. It's the next puzzle. It's what keeps us watching or reading. It's how are they going to fix the puzzle? How are they going to solve the puzzle? And that's my new theory about it. That's why I read now.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm really, yeah, that kind of like your perspective on approaching dialogue. Cause I always like, okay, let me sound this out. I always felt like it just, no matter what I did and how natural it sounded, it just sounded still robotic to me, right?
Mhm.
But like approaching that kind of concept is like, give the audience something to, like, they fill the gap. You don't give the answer,
Right.
whether it's subtext or whatnot. I think that's an important part.
Right. There's a puzzle right there.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so somebody says something and the audience goes, I think they just said, I hate you, but I think they really mean I love you. Right. We're
Right.
always problem solving. We're always doing more work than is actually on the pages. And that's why the pages can be simple because we are so complex in the way that we think about things.
Beautifully put. I just clip after clip out of this. Let me ask you this too, because even when you're skilled at it, I mean, this is not easy stuff. This is hard, especially you're trying to put a new spin on something or something original. When it comes to ideas for a story, let alone going scene to scene and piecing this together, let's go to the concept of ideas. What makes a good idea worthwhile enough to spend months and years? And if it gets turned into a movie, it could be hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. That's a lot to stake your claim on. So let's go into the idea factor.
Well, that's why you have to love your story. That's why that should be the only reason you're writing, at least initially, because you've got to be married to this. You have to retain your passion for it. When you rewrite it, you have to find that passion all over again, right? This is why I coach it and I don't do it. I do not have the attention span for this or a passion for just one story I want to tell. So I'm in awe of my clients who do. And what I find in them that keeps their stories fresh is, and this may sound cliche, but they always have something they want to say underneath it all. So they have a
Hmm.
story to tell, but they have something they want to say, a message they want the audience to hear, or a way of dealing with a problem that they wish the world that is, oh, I don't know, is aspirational, you know? So that I think is the thing that keeps people committed is the thing they want to say under the story they want to tell, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And honestly too, like reading your book and going into those aspects, not only to unlock things for me, my own creativity,
Mhm.
or get out of my own way. Storytelling is everywhere. It's a conversation with someone, Instagram or TikTok post, obviously a book, movie, or whatnot. Even applied, like I interview stunt performers, and they don't look at it like, yeah, let's do a kick here. No, how's this telling the story? Story is in everything we do. So no wonder it's such a thing that we as people gravitate towards so heavily because it is in everything we do.
Yes, yes. And I'm really glad that you brought that up because, yeah, the way that we're telling stories is changing. But when you think about what makes you stop on short content, right? What is it? And it is still the story of it. There's still a mystery there. There's still a question that comes up for you. And I love that you said that about stunt performers. When we're talking about fight scenes, it's actually in that book, in the Coffee Break Screenwriter, is the idea of what's the story of the fight. So it's often like, what's the emotion going in and what's the emotion coming out? That's your story, that's your frame. And the fighting is how you get there.
Yeah, it's like a part of it. I remember, like, I did my first film, and when I did the first couple drafts, I'm getting to the end of it. I'm like, it just feels like this whole thing is like 85% plot.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that too. Like, characters is what drives plot. Plot, I mean, if everything's kind of working together, you need these, but like, you need these characters, the arc of it. That's the storytelling. So maybe let's go into a couple tips, like
Sure.
the top things people like don't look on or have mistakes on when they approach creating their story. They're focusing too much on what happens versus why it's happening. Let's go a couple tools out of the Coffee Break Screenwriter and help people out.
Sure. So you were mentioning like motivation, right? Why are they doing it, right? And one thing people are afraid of is putting emotion into their action lines. So they'll
Hmm.
just write, she does something, okay? But it is absolutely fine to lead with a motivation, to leave with an emotional word, right? Frustrated, she does this. Annoyed, she does this. Jubilant, she does this, right? Those words tell different stories. Okay, in my case, hungry, she does this, right? Like it's like here's the action, and maybe that action is just she leaves the room. But when we have frustrated, she leaves the room. Joyful, she leaves the room. Hungry, she leaves the room. It changes everything. So my tip is if people are feeling like it's not motivated in terms of the characters. Maybe you've been scared to write the emotion into the action line, and just doing a little action line pass with emotion will give it the rewrite that it needs.
Interesting. And thus, actions are stronger than words. So we can show that and get, as viewers or readers, empathy. And now we're, as audience, because I always think, like, right, the writers, the filmmakers, that's like one half of a story or a project, if you will. The other half is that audience engagement or participation. And what bridges, there's whole courses on that, but what bridges it is what you're saying, is that empathy and that emotion to
Right,
that
we
character.
connect to the emotion of the moment so that we understand the action that's happening, and that action leads to a new emotion, which leads to a new action, and so on. And that's what propels the story. It's not just a list of stuff, it's how people are emotionally changing that's motivating them to do new things.
I've noticed this too, like working with and interviewing actors, because you have an acting background
Mhm.
and you kind of got into this because oh yeah, I could digest this and figure out the script, what the meaning is. There's a lot to it. Like I know, like Quentin Tarantino started as an actor, and he was a cinephile too, but like an actor, I see a lot of actors become great screenwriters because there's so much more going into it as an actor because they build like backstory and all this stuff. Maybe you can go into the concept as an actor and actress going into story writing, and maybe as a writer or
Mhm.
director, how I can use that as a tool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Nobody's asked me that before because I rarely out myself as having had an acting background. But I will say that it always made me read everything with a certain amount of emotion, because I was always thinking, well, how would I convey this as an actor? Right? If I was saying this out loud, if I was trying to get an audience to understand what's on the pages here, okay, what am I lifting off emotionally? So that is probably why actors are do tend to be good writers, because they're already thinking about that, right? How can I express or show emotionally what's really going on with my character so that it conveys from the page to the screen?
Yeah.
So I guess for a writer, my advice would be get emotionally invested as you write. Channel your characters, be in the moment, get angry, cry, make yourself laugh. It's okay. Be with your characters the way that an actor would be channeling a character. Try that. Nobody's watching. Go for
It's okay. It's a safe place.
it. Yeah.
Let's talk about too your podcast, On the Page podcast,
Yeah.
and going these different subjects. And I mean, how do you like to approach? Is it just things you have through students and coaching, subjects get brought up, or maybe you just see doing your career, like you see these highs and lows, what's old now becomes new. What do you do as far as topics?
So, On the Page podcast has been around for 19 years, Tom.
Wow.
And I'm about to hit episode 1000. And I don't know if you know this, but then I'm ending it. Do you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, mid July, I'm ending it at episode 1000, because a
Because it's
thousand of anything is really just enough, right? It's enough. But what has been cool is when you've been doing something long enough, when I need a guest, I can dip into my pool of students and clients that have become successful. You wait long enough, people become successful. So the person who took your class in 2015 is now show running a show here, and you can say, hey, I'd love to have you on the show to talk about your progress and talk about what you've learned as a writer. And so I've had sort of a wealth of riches with guest opportunities who then come in and talk about being a working writer, which I am not. So I can really hear what they experience in the trenches, and my listeners can learn from that.
well, that's amazing. I'm sure you got a big one planned. So
Well, for episode 1000, I don't really have a big one planned. I just like, I, you know, I just, I don't know. I'm just like, just heading toward those final five. That's all.
yeah, it's the finish line. Now let's go a little into like a coffee break screenwriter and going to break the rules. I notice when you start to master anything,
Mhm.
that's where you can get a little more malleable and you can
Hmm.
start playing with it. So maybe is that why you approach that? And then it's kind of like we have rules, right? You said we need basics.
Right.
Maybe it helps your writers become more open to things or create something refreshing. Or maybe it is a way to do it. Like, here's a normal story, but let's tweak it here. So let's maybe give me one or two rules to
Yeah.
break. We can all look at too.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So yes, I wrote something called the Coffee Break Screenwriter Breaks the Rules after I wrote the Coffee Break Screenwriter because so many people were they were just feeling that they had to follow things a certain way and it was getting in the way of their creativity. Let's see. I happen to have the book here. I
Oh,
have to
sure.
refresh my memory about your question. It's like what rules was it? Okay, so every chapter is what's the rule? Why do people ask you to follow it? How can you creatively break it? And how can breaking it also break bad? So be careful, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's how so here's one. And it is that the main character must be likable. That one kills me, right? And we talk about why it exists, and it's to make the audience root for the character or get behind the character's eyes or to make us feel there's a possibility for redemption. But you want to secretly break it, right? You want to break it because characters who aren't likable, who say the thing that's on their mind or do the thing we wouldn't dare to do, we love those characters, right? There wouldn't be any
Right.
TV shows without those characters. So we talk about how to break it. And there's a list here. One thing is to create a bigger jerk, like this person might be, have a moral barometer that sort of slides up and down, right? But she's not that guy over there, that person who has no moral barometer at all, So
Right.
that bigger jerk kind of can create empathy for somebody that you think is, quote, unlikable. Okay. Another thing to do is to show the context to make sure that we see why is that person acting the way that they are. Sometimes we felt like that too. We just haven't dared say the thing that they just did. To balance flaw with skill, maybe they are unlikable in one area of their life, but they're the best nurse or doctor ever. So who wouldn't be on their side, And also to show the consequences. Often when somebody is quote unlikable, it's because they have a whole arc that is what the movie is about. They have to start off in a certain place so that they can redeem themselves, and they often face consequences. So it's tips like that are in that book, which is here's why, but do break it. Just here's some ways to do so creatively, if that makes sense.
That's amazing. Yeah, it gets you. Well, it doesn't just challenge you to different ways of thinking and approaching it, but that is real. Like we're watching Sopranos or watching Breaking Bad. They're doing really bad stuff. However, like I get it, and if I was in that position, I could relate with this. Or now I'm more reaching as a viewer or reader. I
Hmm.
love that. That's perfect. That's something we can all apply, and that's everyday life too. That you see it in everyday life. Everyday life is not clean with a big bow on it.
Yeah. And who wants to follow a bunch of perfect people around, right?
Right. Whether, your protagonist, this is what really dawned on me. Your protagonist doesn't mean this is a good guy or, a good gal. This is just the main character of the story that we're kind of on this journey. I'm
Right.
like, I'm like, oh, because growing up, right? It's like, okay, it's Superman or, right? And the antagonist doesn't even have to be a person. It could be the weather and it's just so interesting. I always felt like, especially being a comic book guy growing up, I felt like, okay, Spider-Man's amazing, and it truly is. But what really makes him more interesting and defines him, he's got like some really crazy villains that are, it's not just like, oh, this villain's the opposite of them or opposite color of them too, like
Yeah.
green and red, but like that's what kind of challenges that concept. So that coincides with that. Can we go into how to make an interesting, because character does drive the story, and we're on that path of the protagonist, but the protagonist doesn't have to be a Boy Scout.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think, okay, so I hope I'm saying this right too. I'm going to try and speak comic book for a
Oh,
second.
go
Okay.
for it.
All right. So what's interesting about comic book villains, right, is that they often are either the opposite of the protagonist, of the superhero. Okay, that's easy. But sometimes they are the extreme of what that superhero could be if he's not careful. They are acting out the recklessness that that same superhero could be. Like I think is it Venom that's super that is Spider-Man's
Yep.
nemesis, right?
Yep.
Who looks a little like Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
So Venom, see, like I said, I'm just trying to speak comic book. I hope I'm getting it right. But is like the extreme of Spider-Man, not the opposite. He's the extreme of
Interesting.
probably how Spider-Man wishes he could act sometimes. So he's watching his alter ego act out, as opposed to like the Joker and Batman. They are opposites, right? The Batman has no sense of humor. Okay. The Joker is constantly joking. That's his thing, right? Black, white, like they're just like they went for who is the absolute opposite of Batman. So you could do opposites or you could do sort of extreme versions of who the superhero already is. And you could apply that to regular characters as well.
That's fantastic. I'm just hearing it. Yeah, it enriches it, like truly enriches it. It's not just like different sides of the coin. It can be an extreme version of what that hero could be. Let's go into this. I'm just going to speak for myself. I know a lot of people listening go through this too, writing or creating. You do go through spells of like trying to trust your intuition, if you will, or having confidence, like, man, am I doing the right thing here? Do I have to start all over again? Or man, I'm blanking out here. And it's not writer's block. I think that's kind of overused as a generalized concept. Writer's block say, oh, I can't think of things. No, I'm thinking too much, and I feel like I can go all these ways. So what's a good practical thing we could all do to stay grounded in this mindset of your trusting in your intuition of telling that story?
I guess your mantra would be I am a story expert. I've watched tons of movies and TV shows. I am a story expert. Okay. Tell yourself that, you know, and I know more than I think I do. Tell yourself that too. Okay. If you can just have those two mantras, I think you'll be okay, because it's actually true, you know?
Oh, that's just I feel my shoulders relax. This is a therapy session, folks. No, it is though. I mean, like as a writing and filmmaking and just creating and songwriters. I mean, it's you kind of got to be a little crazy to get into it. So,
Yeah. I guess probably the third one would be why not you? So many people, they get in their heads and the people I see who do succeed are the ones who just go forward and they have faith in themselves. And I see some really talented people hold themselves back. And I'm just like, why not you? Why not you? Who says it's them? Why not you? And I think there is this sense of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And that
mm,
does go into some, that's out of my wheelhouse, right?
right,
But if you can just ask yourself, like, why not?
yeah,
Hey, it's currently so far a free country. Why not you?
yeah, right. How you? And Pilar, what would you say? And this is probably the toughest question of today. What would you say would be your Mount Rushmore of writers that have inspired you? I know it's tough to narrow it down to four, but
Mhm.
let's maybe go with four that you go, these inspired me either to get into it, continue, so on and so forth. What inspired four writers that have inspired you the most, whether it's novelizations, screenplays, so on and so forth?
Oh, geez. So I guess you're not going to believe me when I say it's really more my students and clients that have inspired
Okay,
me
yeah.
to change what I do, to keep going, to say, oh, that works. So I've been name dropping her a lot. Tracy Lehman is an independent writer, director. She had a very personal story. The way I coach now is story to script. So I coach from idea through finished draft. We assign deadlines and I read in chunks until it's finished. And I'm helping develop all that way, And this was one when I left when I was like, this is special. This is special. And she wrote and directed it, and it won the jury prize at South by Southwest. And she had a meeting with Mattel, and she's going to be writing for Mattel IP now. Okay, from an indie movie to that, like that's how good she is. Okay, so people like that inspire me all the time. There was like way back. I'm talking like 18 years ago. There was a guy, I loved his writing. He's become a really good friend since, Matt Harris. He wrote this script. It won the Nickel Fellowship. He wrote another script. I was like, this is the one, right? It went through all these different directors over the years. It was optioned and re-optioned. And finally, 18 years later, was made with Melissa McCarthy and Kevin Kline and was called The Starling and won the Humanitas Prize. Now, how did that inspire me? It was a lesson in patience, but it was also a lesson in the fact that this guy was also living his life along the way. He became a huge reality show producer along the way because he's like, well, I love writing screenplays and I'm going to keep writing them, the what else have you got thing, but also I'm going to live my life. And I watched, he had two kids and, again, we've become friends, right? So these kind of writers and clients inspire me because they also live their own full life while creating. They never stop creating, they never stop living, they never stop being good people. And I don't know, it teaches me to do this, try and do the same as I'm running my business or working with people. So that's two people, and I could go on, but it's an example of some inspiration I've gotten.
I mean, you do learn. Well, you learn from your kids, and you learn from your students. You learn from everything. It's not just people senior to you.
Right, exactly, exactly.
In the beginning of our talk today, being able to break down a script and figure out what's working here, what's making it not work, and being like a professor and MFA screenwriting at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts.
Yeah, it's fun.
Um, yeah, what's a good way? Because I feel like when I was a songwriter, I learned by learning songs.
Mhm.
You got your basics, but when you start really by learning songs, so people have lots of access to screen scripts from popular TV shows and films now, or obviously novels and everything in between. What are some good ways for people to approach that, to break it down and learn from that, from the whether it's the greats or things? Hey, I would like to make a movie like this, for example. What's a good way to approach a scene or whatnot and break that down and what you're really looking for there, why that worked or didn't work?
I think that if it comes to a scene, right, you're going to leave a scene with a certain emotion as the reader. Okay. Emotionally, are you feeling what the writer's trying to lay out for you, right? Oh, this woman is feeling frustrated and I'm feeling frustrated for her. I wonder what she's going to do about it. Okay. But if I leave the scene and I go, what was the story of that scene? How am I supposed to be feeling? How is she feeling? This seems kind of dropped in. This was just, it then that writer will probably get a note about that. Like, what are you trying to do here? And how can we meet your intention? What is the story of the scene? So when you get a note from somebody that says, how is this moving the story forward? It's not just a plot note. It means emotionally, how is this driving the
Right.
story forward? Is that answering your
Yeah,
question?
that's good. It makes sense because, like, if you're reading that passage, you can get like, okay, they use this format or a motif or whatnot, but really, like, what am I thinking and feeling in this passage, and why does this feel like I'm not being moved on it, or you're watching a good show or reading a good book, and all of a sudden, like, why do I have tears welling up in my eyes? But it's like, yeah, it comes down to that, and there's also a factor of like, hey, if this scene or passage doesn't move the story along, the character
Right.
arc along, like it's got to go, right?
Yeah, sometimes it is just plot. But if you're left with not understanding it emotionally or in
Mm.
terms of plot, it shouldn't be there, or you need to serve your intentions better, which is usually the case. Usually it doesn't need to be there, and the writer just hasn't found a way to bring out that reason in the scene. And that's where the rewriting comes
And what's a good way? I think this is a great point I've talked with people recently on. It's good to get notes and take them, like audience feedback. I do like a screening, for example, or if you write your script, show it to other writers or whatnot. But what about as a writer, approaching whether it's criticism or dealing with that outside kind of force in? What's a good way to approach that to learn from it
Hmm.
and to progress doing your next thing where you're not carrying on any negativity from that, like questioning yourself or whatnot? Again, I guess really it must be boiling down believing your story, but like maybe it didn't resonate with audiences or something. So I think the appropriate question and thing to look at here from you, it would be like how to learn from that and not take it, I guess, to heart.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because you get all kinds of notes. So, first of all, when you do get a note, if you don't understand it, just ask somebody to clarify it. That way you won't get in your head about it. Because sometimes people are trying to express something and they're not great at it either, you know? They
Right,
might be
right,
all over the place. So, one way to get them to clarify it sometimes is to parrot it back. Say, oh, so you're saying such and such. Oh, no, no, I'm not saying this, I'm saying this. You know, oh, is there a specific example you can give me? Yeah, right here on this page. And maybe, you can throw around some ideas with that person about where it could be improved and how. That's called developing things. You will leave that feeling much more positive than somebody throwing a bunch of notes at you. You don't understand them. All you hear is, I don't like, I don't like, I don't like. And you go and say, I'm never going to be a writer. So have the conversation, I guess is what I'm saying. Make sure you understand it. And then sometimes when you don't feel like it's a note that really works for you, or maybe they miss something, you can yes and it, which is yes. And I actually did that here. I want to bring your attention to it. Do you think it works over there? Oh, yes, I do. Do you think I need to bring it in here too? Wouldn't that be repetitive? Oh, no, 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 not at all. Right? So doing yes and will often help you focus somebody in the right direction rather than saying, no, I did that. What? No, right? Now you've also lost that relationship.
obviously keeps you grounded and professional, but it keeps you grounded as an artist or whatnot.
Right.
And I love that. And kind of in closing, what kind of things do you have possibly coming up that you would like to talk about? What's the future look like for Pilar? I know the podcast is ending soon, but yeah, what's the future plans here?
So I always put whatever I'm doing on my website, and that website is on the page.tv. And so all of my Zoom classes that I did before I took my current job as an assistant professor at UNCSA, all those classes still live on that site. And people can actually, if they want a bite-sized class, they can just get the recorded version and all the handouts and the PowerPoints and all that stuff. So that's always there. But I'm still thinking about sort of the what's next as far as if I'm not doing the podcast, what's next that I can kind of offer the general writing public. I'm not 100% sure. I do continue to consult story to script constantly. So if anybody's looking for coaching, and it is intense coaching, they should also go to that website, look at coaching, and look at story to script for feature and for TV.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Methods of Fiction. To hear more insights from filmmaking and entertainment industry professionals, subscribe to our video podcast on YouTube. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to follow us there as well. We look forward to having you join us again on the next episode.